Larry Underwood pulled around the corner and found a parking space big enough for the Datsun Z between a fire hydrant and somebody's trash can that had fallen into the gutter. There was something unpleasant in the trash can, and Larry tried to tell himself that he really hadn't seen the stiffening dead cat and the rat gnawing at its white-furred belly. The rat was gone so fast from the sweep of his headlights that it really might not have been there. The cat, however, was fixed in stasis, and he supposed, killing the disease alien, if you believe in one, you had to believe in the other. Welcome everyone to another installment of my Stephen King analysis series, although this time we're going to do something a tiny bit different as I'm stepping away from the chronological order for a bit to start tackling one of the big ones, The Stand, at the same time that I expose you to one of my biggest theories about King's writing, a thing that I lovingly call the King's formula. Basically, I believe that yes, Stephen King has a very clear set of characters that he uses in each novel. But it's not as simple as the Stephen King drinking game tries to make it, in a very derogative way, as if no other writers had specific tropes they prefer. No, in fact, depending on how these archetypes mix, because they appear in every book, even in those that have less characters than archetype, because some archetypes mix and match, the ending of the story will be affected, and more importantly, because of this, there is a different message that can be seen in every King's book regarding the nature of hope, fear, and evil, besides the message of the book itself. I am AdalisaZ, and today we're going to start a long walk, not that long walk. No, don't worry, Hei Hei, we are not going to do that long walk yet. Through Stephen King's longest book, as we meet our very first archetype, the artist, that, in The Stand, is perfectly incarnated by Billboard Top 100 artist, Larry Underwood, or Pocket Savior. Let's start from the beginning. Who is the artist in general, when we are talking about the Stephen King works, of course, and why are they important? Well, simple. For as much as those people I mentioned before that say that King always writes himself into his novels because all his main characters are male writers, the truth is that no, not all of his novels have a writer, male or female, as a main character. But about 90% of them have someone with artistic talent and inclination among the group of main characters. Carrie White wrote poetry. Ben Mears is a writer, same as Jack Torrance, Paul Sheldon, Bill Denbrough, and so many others. Yes, writers are the norm, that we can't deny. But we also have graphic designers like Vic Trenton, painters like Edgar Freemantle, and even voice actresses like Rosie Daniels. Scratch a little bit and you will realize that, yeah, you can find a little mention to the arts in practically every novel, at least in those who have a somewhat positive ending. Oh yeah, put a pin on that. We're getting back to it soon. A common trend these artist characters have is that most of them are also recovering from something bad. It can be addiction. In fact, addiction is the most common one, which means that more often than not, the artist overlaps with another archetype favored by King, the addict. But it can also be an accident, even before King's own, past trauma, bullying, or domestic violence. The point is that art is never painless, and those artists who think they are free from trauma are going to get the rug pulled from under their feet hard. A lot of them are men, but not exclusively, and in fact, some of the women are a lot more successful than the men in the survival category for the books. Just see, for example, our dear old Beverly Marsh, who was a fashion designer. Anyway, the most important part is that if they dedicate themselves to an art in a professional manner, we will usually meet them at a crossroads that has to do with their career. They are either in their last chance to truly begin a professional path, like, say, Jack Torrance and his play, the moment when they had to choose leaving a comfort zone and really do what they want, like Paul Sheldon, and we're going to talk about him soon in a different video, or, and this is the case of our case study, the moment when they are on the brink to lose everything due to their own mistakes and hubris. However, what makes the artist really important, and the reason why I'm starting with them and not, say, the sacrifice, which is the character that usually sets things rolling in every King's plot, is that among all the characters in the book, no matter if you have a cast of 2 or a cast of 200, the artist is the only one who has a chance at facing the evil directly and beat it. Notice I say beat the evil, not survive the evil. Those are two very, very different things. They are the hero, the paladin, the knight in the shining armor, the chosen by the gods, even if they are not directly the main character. And, as such, is their responsibility to answer the call from the white and sacrifice a lot, sometimes even their own life, to stop the evil. Here's where we pause a bit and talk about the real world. What makes an artist, well, an artist? That they all work with imagination, and as we saw in it, imagination is sometimes the only thing that works against evil. In a way, borrowing from Michael Sandy mythology, the artists are the first and last line of defense that Fantasia, the world, have against the nothing, the only ones who can fight against the gray men, the evil. And boy, that is poetic for a horror writer, isn't it? And when there is no artist to face evil, things end badly. In the novels I have talked about in my main King series so far, we have only one that has no artist, either as a main character or a supporting one. Pet Sematary. And we know how bad things end up in Pet Sematary since, well, it's still one of King's bleakest books to date. But the other books that have only amateur artists, that is to say, those who only teach literature, Johnny Smith, for example, or good old Dennis Galder at the end of Christine, Andy McGee, to name a few, who didn't get the chance to fully explore their talents, Carrie, oh poor Carrie, and those who aren't there when the evil comes. Vic Trenton didn't have to face a bad evil, but still, had he been in town, his son would have survived. And those have endings that tend to balance toward the bitter end of bittersweet in the sense that, yeah, evil is banished, but not defeated. On the other hand, it was doomed. It went against 5 artists. And yep, the only losers that died were the ones without artistic careers or hobbies. Eddie, the limo driver, and Stan, the accountant. Had either of them gone into teaching or, I don't know, taken ukulele as a hobby, the book would have been 500 pages shorter and they all would still be alive. Because as we will learn later, with good old Sheriff Alan Pagmore, sometimes an artistic hobby helps you to at least survive against the unspeakable evil. But enough talking about generalities. Let's get into some specifics with our case study. Larry Underwood, author of the hit single, Baby, Can You Dig Your Man? We met Larry in a very weird moment in his life. He's got his first album ready to launch and a first top 100 hit single out, which means he's now an official celebrity and riding high on his success. On the other hand, he's also running away from California and a ton of debt he incurred by throwing a party so big that by the end of it he had no money from his original record contract left, and had he stayed there, he'd lose his legs or worse. Because of this, he's just arriving to New York, to his mother's house to cool his heels for a bit. Just as Captain Trips is becoming a real problem, although not big enough for Larry to notice at first. One of Larry's friends described him like this: "There's a hard streak in you. There is something in you that's like biting painful. Whatever it takes to make success, you got it." But Larry doesn't see this. He doesn't think of himself as a hero or anything near it. He believes himself to be profoundly selfish and, at least up to the moment when the Captain Trips epidemic hits, he's always blamed the low points in his life on others and never on his own choices. In fact, when the pandemic finally gets to his higher points and pretty much all of mankind die, Larry is the one main character that seems least emotionally affected by all of it. I mean, his own mother, in her deathbed, says this about him. I think you're a taker. You've always been one. It's like God left some part of you out when He was making you inside of me. You're not bad. That's not what I mean. The worst part, Larry, is that you mean well. This will haunt Larry for a long time, together with the death of the first survivor he meets, an older woman named Rita. It makes him rethink his position in life, his attitude about everyone, and thus, when he meets Nadine, Lucy, and Leo, and we will talk about them later on, he is trying hard to prove his mother wrong. By the time he actually meets Stu, who, if we are being honest, is a real protagonist and one of the few characters that don't fit any archetype here, Fran and Harold, whom we will talk a lot about later, he has changed enough that he now is considered a good man by Lucy and an actual threat to Flag's control of Nadine, who is falling in love with him. Not that Larry knows this. Nadine keeps to herself a lot. Yes, we will talk about Nadine later. Moreover, once the group reaches Boulder, he has proven himself to be trustworthy and reliable to the point that he becomes one of the main leaders of the Free Sun. And it's not just a change forced due to the situation. Larry is constantly given opportunities to slide back down the taker he used to be by Nadine, and okay, some of us wish he had taken the chance. Maybe things would have been different there. By the people who remember his hit song but not himself, like Fran, by the position he knows hold as a part of the council, and instead of taking, he starts giving, even teaching Leo to play guitar. With Flag being a bigger menace, a group is sent by Mother Abigail to face and stop him somehow. The group is formed by Glenn, a teacher who also paints as a hobby, Stu, Ralph, and Larry himself. But by the end of the trip, only Glenn, Ralph, and Larry arrive to Las Vegas, and after Glenn insults Flag to his face, see what I mean about the artists being the only ones who can face the evil directly? Only Ralph and Larry are left to meet a horrible death at the hands of Flag's followers. Once we lay down the artist's path, which of course is very similar to the hero's journey, yes, cat, since that is the basis that King follows, probably unconsciously given how rarely he plots his books before starting to write, it's a lot easier to see it in different works, especially when it comes to the matter of the path always beginning at the lowest point possible, or so the artist thinks, of their lives. And yes, as I said, some artists are mixed with other archetypes we will see later. For example, a very common one pre-detox for King was to mix the artist with the addict, whom, ironically, has almost the exact opposite role in his books when they are two separate people. But in that position, the artist has to conquer two evils, whatever the book evils is, and the addiction itself. Think, for example, of Jack Torrance or Bobby Anderson and Jane Gardner in The Tommyknockers, or, of course, Paul Sheldon in Misery. I don't want to go too deep in the addict's path, as we will see that one later, but with these four examples of an artist who is, or in the case of Bobby, becomes an addict, we have a good sample. See, Jack tries very hard to beat his addiction, and thus, in the end, he managed to keep the Overlook down, despite being dead and fully possessed, before the thing kills Danny. Yes, he dies. But the incredible willpower needed to save his son and die as himself is something not many other characters would have. This is even more clear in the miniseries when we realize that not only Jack Torrance protected his son, he was also consciously not thinking of the heater so it would blow the Overlook up, and the Overlook had to kill Jack with Jack's bare hands in order to control the body. Yes, we will talk about the miniseries one day. He is also a bit of the violent man, so he had two negative types to his one positive of the artist, so he dies. Bobby Anderson is addicted to what the spaceship in the Tommyknockers do to her, and she has little chance to survive given that she was the one person in town most irradiated by the thing. Yes, this makes her become the main antagonist of the book, as in she lets herself go into the addiction as the human Bobby dies, metaphorically speaking, leaving only the Tommyknocker. So addiction wins over art, which is very sad. James Gardner, on the other hand, dies saving the world and thus remaining more or less human in town. He dies because he let himself be lulled by the addiction too long, waited and let others die fighting the aliens before he took action. But in the end, he dies human and a hero because he chooses to leave his addiction behind. We will talk a lot about good old Jim and Bobby when we get to the Tommy knockers in my main series. Paul, on the other hand, becomes an addict right at the beginning of the book, and the whole book is about him fighting addiction and managing to win. He survives despite the original plan for him being the complete opposite by King's own admission, because he fights for his recovery. Even as Annie is forcing pills on him, he finds the strength to refuse. And so he survives, art winning over addiction. When the artist is just an artist, then they always survive, with Larry being the exception, at least in the early books. But then again, Larry was against the most evil of evils and a nuclear bomb. So it would have taken a Deus Ex Machina the size never seen in King's books for him to survive. But Ben Mears, all the artist in it, good old Tad Viamont, who also had it hard as he faced one of the very few evil artists in King's work, well, sort of evil artist, Clayton Riddle, Edgar Fremantle, and others, well, if they are an artist, they survive. They may not like how they survive it, but they survive. Because in the end, art is eternal. Next time you pick up a Stephen King book and want to join in the old meme of King's only writing writers, think a little bit about the role of, say, the writer, or artist, painter, singer, graphic designer in the story. Because this holds even in the longer short stories like The Langoliers or The Mist. I mean, it even holds in the terrible Mist movie ending, as the artist is literally forbidden to kill himself by the universe, even when it's that the only thing he wants more than anything else. I will, one day, explain exactly why the Mist movie ending doesn't work within the story, even if some people, including King himself, like it so much. It's a sweet message to keep, even in the darkest moment, even with characters with dark sides, where they can use their art to hold back the danger, like Rose Mather's Rose Daniels, who happens to be King's one and only voice actress. I want to thank my dear patrons Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, and Jessic, as well as my first supporter Tanya Pineda and Amy Sung, who is the best person in the universe and with whom these videos will not exist. I also want to remind you that if you want to support these and my other projects and get your name mentioned here, you can do so at patreon.com/AdalisaZ, with a link on the description, as I know my name can be hard to spell. And with just $1 a month, you will always be thanked in my videos, as well as get access to a ton of art before anyone else. Or, if you prefer a one-off offer, a coffee with just one donation of $3 and you will get a mention in my next video I make. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscriptions to the channel, comments so that the algorithm catches engagement, and of course, you sharing the links. By the way, I am going to be at San Diego Comic Con this July, from July 20 to July 24 in the Artist Alley, in table AA15. So please, if you are around, come and say hi. I also welcome all your questions, feedbacks, and suggestions in the comments below. And while these archetype videos will also come on Mondays, and they will come while I finish the main book videos, I am not sure if the next one will be before the Misery one. But when we come back to the stand, we will talk about the role of the child in Stephen King's novels.